Okay, in this tutorial series we're going to create an F1 vehicle using OnShape. The first thing we need to do is to ensure that our units are set to millimeters and grams. This will be quite important later on. So you can change this in your overall system preferences, but you can double check for the document, making sure you're on millimeters and grams. And assuming that's okay, you can hit the tick. First thing we're going to do is open a sketch on the top plane. And if we hit the N key, we can spin the camera, and the P key to hide the planes. We're going to draw a rectangle that represents the wooden block that our car has to fit inside, otherwise it can't physically be made. So we're going to press the D key to dimension this. This wooden block is 65 wide, and the actual block is something like 223 long, but we can't use the whole block because we need to hold the end of it while we're machining, so I recommend making it 200. Okay, we're going to use the midpoint relation to get this centered, so we'll click this line and our origin, and it will now center it. And then we're going to press L for line and draw a straight line across the middle. And what we're going to do is drag a box around everything except this one, and press the Q key or the construction button. That will make it a construction line. Okay, next step, now that we have our overall proportions, is to draw the wheels. Everything we're only going to do on one side of the car. Setting your wheel size is a really important step. And if you're in the professional class, they're going to be 26 by 15 at the minimum. However, if you're in cadet or development, they're actually going to be bigger than that. The diameter ends up being something like 33. And the thickness is something like 15.89. All of these dimensions are in the back with the rules, so you can look those up to make sure you get it just right. Same again, so we're going to come up to corner rectangle. I'm going to snap that one to there and there, and instead of dimensioning this again, I'm going to come up to equals, click on this line and then this line, and it forces them to be the same, and then the same for this line and this line. What we have now are two wheels that we can move wherever we want on the car, and as you'll see shortly, the geometry will update to accommodate. Everything I do now is going to be a series of straight lines by pressing L, or 3-point arcs by pressing A. I'm going to start by drawing some bodywork around the wheel. I'm going to draw the empty area behind this wheel, and then I might draw some side pods, and now start to draw some area just inside this wheel. And I might have an arc here to bring it to a slightly pointier nose. And at the back of the car I might have it curve in, like so. Missing one more line, because you can see it's not shaded. And that is an arc from here to here. If it's still not shaded, I can see there's still some dotted lines, so I'm going to fill those in. 1 and 2. Okay, at this stage I actually have enough to extrude the first part of the car, but I would like to give it a few more dimensions. So I'm going to put in the gap between the wheel and the bodywork. The minimum is 1, but it's actually really hard to make a car that precise, so I'm going to go 2. I'll do the same here. Now the gap in the rules where you have to have space behind the front wheel is 15, so we might as well dimension that and get it locked down. And then the only other thing we should be missing is our gap in between the bodywork and the wheel this way, and once again I'm going to set that as 2 millimeters. Okay, for now that sketch is finished with. But I would like to point out that you can reposition the wheels with the way we've drawn it, and it should be able to update. You can see we've got a slight problem here. If we reposition this, we don't want the arc to come outside. So let's come up to tangent, make this a tangent with that line. And that will probably take away some flexibility, but at least our line stays within the car. So we're going to hit the tick to close that sketch. If we press P for planes, spin the camera around, you can see it's actually centered down the middle of this plane here, which is going to help things later on. I'm going to do a second sketch, and this time we're going to click, in my case, the right hand plane. So we're drawing, looking front on the car. Hit P to hide those again. Okay, so we want to match the rectangle here, so we're going to come up and press the use button, which effectively traces a line. I'm going to trace that one and then draw the rest of our lines. So once again, we're not paying any attention to the size at this stage. I'm just drawing the geometry where I want it. And now I will come and add the dimensions by pressing the D key. The size of our balsa block is 50. And very importantly, we need to draw the hole for where the canister is going to be. We need to set the size for that as 9.5 radius, which equals a 19 diameter. And height from the base of the block is 29. You can see this line should actually be touching there to ensure it's a proper semicircle. If it's not a semicircle, it's going to be in the wrong place. So we'll go to coincident, which means two things touch. Click on here, and then the line. We can see that's now locked in the correct position. And the only other thing we have, if we have a cadet or development car, we're going to have the channel underneath that comes in the timber block. So we'll draw this on roughly and then add the correct dimensions. So this is 6 high and it's 6 wide, but remember we're only doing half of it, so it's therefore going to be 3. Okay, I think I can come up to trim, and I will leave that there. I'll click on it and change these to construction lines by clicking on it and pressing the Q key. Okay, we're finished with this sketch. We don't need to rename all of our sketches, but it's a really good idea for these ones to rename them. So we're going to rename them and call it top view, and rename this one and call it rear view. Okay, we're ready to start making our car. Everything we do is going to be driven from these two sketches. All of our edits will mainly come on these two, and then later on we can come back and change things on these two sketches, and everything else will update. So let's show you an example of that. Firstly, we're going to go to Extrude, and we're going to click on our main piece of geometry here, and we'll change the direction so we're coming up, and we might try something like 20 millimeters to start. Okay, so now that we have our main body, we're going to flesh out the area around the canister. So we're going to double click on rear view to edit that, the N key to put the camera flat, and at the moment this is the hole where the canister goes, so we actually need to draw the timber bodywork around it. So we're going to draw another 3-point arc. We're not going to worry about getting it accurate because that's where we use the concentric button, and when we click the two circles after that, it locks the same center point in, so they will always be perfectly around each other. Now the rules dictate that we have to have 3.5 millimeters of timber between the hole in the middle and the outer chamber. To be safe, let's keep it at 4 mils. So if we add 4 to 9.5, it gives us 13.5. And I've gone out of that too quickly, but I'm also going to have a straight line coming down here, and then press M for trim, the scissors, and trim away this line here. Okay, I now have what I need to make the main canister holder. I'm going to do it with 2 extrusions. For the first one, I'm going to click both the hole and around the hole, our bodywork, and we're going to set that to 56 because the hole is 52 and we want 4 millimeters at the front of it to make sure it's strong. So there's our preview, and then we hit the tick. Then we need to show our sketch, do our second extrusion. This time we're just going to click the center part and set that to 52. And we should have our, if we click remove, we will have our hole ready to go. So that's the minimum bodywork we need around the canister, but this design is clearly not very aerodynamic, so we need to have some sort of nicely sloping shape here to get this looking a little bit nicer and working a little bit better. So to do that, we're going to have a loft. A loft is when we have 2 flat shapes and it draws a geometry in between them. Okay, so let's start by drawing a sketch on the upper section, and we're more or less going to match this shape. So we have a straight line, straight line, straight line, arc. So line tool first, straight line out, straight line up, an arc, and then finally a straight line to close that off. We've matched our geometry as if it fell over. Now we can come to loft, click on this one, click on this one, and you can see it's matched them up nicely. Sometimes you have to click match vertices and click on the similar point, so the top point versus the top point, and it should fix some of those issues. An important thing to look at is our start profile, the first one we picked. We can set that to be a tangent to the profile, nope, a normal to the profile, and now it'll come out much more smoothly from there. So if I up this number, you can see that it's exaggerated how far it comes out before it's allowed to curve down to the other shape. So if I do a smaller number, like 0.5, it's going to come out very slightly before it starts to curve. But for now, we'll leave it as 1. Okay, I'd just like to point out at this stage that anything we've done so far, we can come back and edit the sketch. So for instance, if I decide I want this wheel a little bit further towards the back, I can drag that, update the sketch, and the hole will update. That's actually really important for our next step, which is to draw where the wheels are and set up for the front and rear wings. So to do this, we're going to create a drawing plane that's actually out on the edge of the car, but you might not have done this flat. So to make sure this is foolproof, we're going to click the plane button, and basically it wants to know where an existing plane is, and then we'll offset it the distance of the timber block. So our plane that we want in this case is the front plane, and since the block is 65, it's going to be 32.5. When I hit the tick, I can spin the camera around. I can see that that's perfectly in line with the outside of the car. We're going to draw a sketch here. Once again, press P until everything's disappeared so we can see what we're doing. And just for now, I'm going to re-show that top view because we're going to trace these lines here to match the wheels. So we'll come up to Use, trace that, trace that. I also recommend drawing a line beneath those. That's horizontal, that's going to be our road. And all 3 of these lines we've just drawn, we can set to construction lines by pressing Q or clicking that button. Okay, we now have, if we spin the camera with the N key, our exact positioning of the wheels. So if I press C for circle and then hover up, I can now snap the wheels and they're lined up exactly where the other wheels are. If I want to, I might actually do a little construction line up to here. set this line to be vertical and that to be a tangent with there, and that should lock that in exactly where it needs to be. Make that construction. So now I should be able to change the position of the wheels up and down, but not necessarily left to right. So I do want to lock with a tangent this wheel to this line. That makes sure the ground actually touches the wheels. And to set our right height, all we need to do is now dimension this line to this line. We might set it at something like 4, and it puts our wheels perfectly in position. For the rear of the car, we're going to do the exact same thing. So hover, come up, and I can actually hover over to here, like so. Bring that down till it touches. And this one is blue, or if it was blue, we could set it equals and click on this one, and it locks the two wheels to be the same. Okay, this is a really important sketch. It's one of our main 3 with the top view, rear view, and our third one we're going to rename wheels and wings. And at this stage we're going to use this sketch to go in the opposite direction, and I think we set it as 15.89. That should be in line with, yep, what we drew earlier. So that's perfect. There's our wheels in place. One more thing, as you can probably tell from the name, if we double click on this, we're actually going to add our front and rear wings to this sketch as well. So I'm not going to go through all of the sizes of these things in this video. It's up for you to check the rules, but I'll just draw a generic shaped wing by starting with a rectangle, and then 2 arcs on either end. Please remember that when we're doing an F1 in school's car, we do not actually want any downforce or lift. We just want the minimum drag possible. So I've made that a construction line to make it simple. When you're checking the rules and doing your dimensions, you can come across and set your thickness and your chord and everything else that you need. I'm going to go nice and thick, 5mm for that one. And then at the front we have a very specific rule, and that is that we can't cover a certain amount of the wheel. So I'll actually drag that one down to snap it. Bring this one out here, and I might do an arc for the top. Now the rules say that we can't cover more than 15mm of this front wheel from the track. So in this side view we're going to dimension from the track to the top of the wing. So you can see it's over at the moment, so I'm going to make it 14 mils to play it safe. You can see that updates nicely. Okay, so this is automatically updated here, but Extrude 4 we don't actually want that to happen. We just want this and this. So I'm just updating that, hitting the tick. Now I'm going to show it again to do the wings. So I'm going to go to Extrude, I'll do them separately. Front wing, instead of putting in a distance to here, I might change this curve later and then it might not touch. So we're going to actually change it to up to next. Change the direction. And you can see there it's following the curve where it terminates. So we'll change it to add. And you can see it's automatically doing it with part 1. That's perfect. And we'll do the same thing with our rear wing now. Click on the rear wing, change the direction, and instead of having a distance where, for instance, this one is going to poke through and leave some ugly geometry, we change it to up to next, and now it actually ends on that curve where it meets it. Okay, it's a pretty simple F1 car, but it's an F1 car that's mostly complete. I think it would be a good time to start adding some different fillets and things like that before we mirror the other half of the car. So a nice one might be this nose cone. You can drag that actually quite big. And any pointed edges in the car aren't actually allowed, so we might do not quite that big. 1.5 mils. The rules actually dictate what the minimum is. Of course, you would need to recheck your sketches, recheck your dimensions here to make sure you're staying within the allowable size. Please keep in mind too that any internal angles like that, the cutter is actually will leave a round edge like this because the end of the cutter is round. So it's a 6mm cutter, it's going to leave a 3mm radius, so it's probably a good idea to add all of these things now rather than wonder why the car has changed later on after it's machined. So another one I might add is the same 3mm around the front wing. If you're doing a cadet and or a development class car where the rear wing at least and possibly the front wing needs to be made out of timber, then this is actually extremely important for you to do this just to strengthen it because it's likely to snap off during manufacture. Okay, it's starting to look a little bit better. Might do another one under here. Probably not so far as running into that circle, so it's playing up here, so we're going to have to type in a measurement till we'll get what we want. That one's too far. 20. That's not too bad. We've still got a pretty flat surface here, so we're not interfering with the canister chamber. Before we mirror it, I realized I've forgotten one thing, and that's to do the holes in the car where the axle comes through. So we'll come back to this important sketch, double click, and we need a 6mm hole. So I'll draw my two circles. I'll come to equals, click on one and then the other. That locks them to be the same. So now I only have to dimension 1, 6, and we're good to go. So we need one more extrusion, and it's there and there, and we're going to remove. And instead of putting in a distance, once again, we're going to use one of the smarter options and say through all. And that will cut it through the wheel, through the bodywork. Doesn't matter how thick we make the bodywork, the hole will appear. Okay, we have a red error here because the merge scope, I should have said through all, and now it will cut until it reaches the end. Okay, I can now hide that one, and I'm ready to do my mirror. This is probably the easiest part of the car. Click on mirror. We're set to a part mirror as opposed to one of these other ones. So if we're mirroring this, this, and this, we click on them. The mirror plane is just the flat surface on the inside. And if we're happy with the preview, we can always do the slider. We hit the tick, and we have our car. A couple of other things we might like to do at this stage. One is rename the body of the car just to make sure that is really clear. You can rename all the other wheels if you like, but an important step to do is to right click on it and assign a material. If we click on here and type in BAL, we'll get balsa, which is what we want. We can hit the tick. If you want, you can change the appearance. There's no wood grain, but maybe a yellow or whatever your team color is. That might help you. And now if we click on the body, we'll actually get this little symbol down here for the mass properties, and it will tell us things like the volume and the center of mass, which is in the rules that you have to be able to say where that is. Now the volume is something you want as small as possible. Depending on which class you're in, you have a minimum weight. The closer you can get to that minimum weight without going under, the better. Because a heavy car is going to be a slow car compared to a car that's right on the minimum weight. So this number here, 191944, it's a good time to start looking at parts of the car to think, how can I get this smaller? What can I do to trim away bodywork and save some volume and therefore some mass from the car? So it's a good chance to show how, with those couple of key sketches that we named and set up, how we can do that. So for instance, from our top view, I might actually decide to make this a little bit skinnier here. Now I am having some issues here like I did before, so I'm going to make this one, no, I don't want that one to be a tangent, I want this one to be a tangent with there. Actually want this one to come out on an angle like that. So maybe I'll make the nose a little bit skinnier here, save a little bit of weight. Might make it a little bit skinnier at the back here. If it'll let me drag it. No, so maybe I'll drag this one a little bit different, and hopefully when I hit the tick, it just simply works its way down all of the features and updates. And once again, we can go to body, check the properties, and we were at 191 and we're down to 190, so we did save a little bit of volume there. Notice too that in our top view sketch we actually changed the position of the wheel, and the way we've done it, because in the wheels and wing sketch we referenced that original view from above, that will move to the new position and everything will be perfectly in place no matter what we do to update. Probably one last thing we've forgotten for a cadet and a development car, and that is the channel underneath. So I'm going to hide my wheels and wings and bring back my rear view. Now, important point here, because I've only drawn this on one side, this cutout I want to do, I actually need to temporarily undo the mirror. I can do that by dragging the rollback bar above the mirror. Now I can do my... Oh, I've got a problem here. Haven't sealed this, so let's come back up to the review and draw my missing line. Now I can do my extrude. I'll go remove this direction, cut through all, hit the tick. Now this effectively has put my new extrude, instead of after mirror 1 in the order that I'm making it, because I dragged the bar before mirror 1, I've kind of gone back in time and inserted it there. So now when I put this below, because I did a part mirror, that hole is now part of the car and it just mirrors straight across to the other side. So anytime I want to, for instance, change, I might want to add a new fillet on this edge, I need to do the same thing. Drag the mirror back, do my fillet, and because it's on one side, when I reapply the mirror, it will now be on both sides.